This video will be on the Kitchen Task Assessment, or the KTA. This assessment was made for people with senile dementia of the Alzheimer's type, and in the study I read, the average age was 71.75 years old. It is a standardized performance-based measure that can be completed in a clinic setting or in a client's home, and it doesn't take that long to complete. This assessment is nice because it gives us an idea of strategies we can create and give to caregivers, which will help them manage their cognitively impaired loved one. There are 6 areas of cognition assessed. Initiation, can the client begin the task? Organization, can the client gather all the materials? Performance of all steps, can the client perform all the steps necessary to complete the task? Sequencing, can the client sequence the activities that make it possible to complete the task? Judgment and safety, is the person safe in their environment? And completion, does the client know when he or she is finished with the task? According to Baum and Edwards, the KTA overall is a valid and reliable measure that can be used as a clinical as well as a research tool because it discriminates the performance of persons across all stages of the disease. Therefore, it can record changes in the person's performance over time. When using the Kendall's Tau B analysis, the inter-rater reliability score was 0.853. The valid and reliable tests listed below were correlated with the KTA to determine construct validity. The KTA was highly correlated with token tests parts 2 through 6. It was significantly, but not perfectly, correlated with the BLEST and CDR tests. Internal consistency for the KTA is good. And lastly, correlation and factor analyses were used to determine the correlation coefficients and the relationships for the 6 variables tested: initiation, organization, including all steps, sequencing, safety, and completion. As a result, the correlation coefficients were significant and the factor analyses were all above 0.88. Due to this assessment being an assessment for people with dementia, you don't want them to fail. So prior to administering the test, you want to do a pre-test, and this is when you would ask the client to wash his or her hands. This determines if they have the ability to even respond to verbal or physical assistance. You also want to set up the materials ahead of time. The materials include 2 or 3 flavors of pudding mix, 1 to 1.5 quart saucepan with a heat-resistant handle, 1 wooden spoon, a rubber scraper, a 2-cup glass measuring cup, and 4 small dishes. Also make sure there's a quart of milk in the fridge, and type out the instructions that are on the box in large letters, print them out, and place them where the client can read them. You also want to make sure that hand soap and paper towels are placed next to the sink for when you want them to wash their hands prior to administration. For administrating, you want to tell the person to mix the box of pudding and pour the mixture into 4 dishes. Tell them the milk is in the fridge, how the stove works and which burner to use, that the instructions are on the box as well as the wall, and to begin when ready. As the therapist, you don't want to cue right away. Wait at least 5 seconds unless you determine that they can't perform it without help, or unless if safety is an issue. In terms of scoring, the higher the score, the more impaired the performance and the more support is required. Therefore, the therapist scores the client based on their performance and the level of support they needed to provide. The scores range from 0 to 3 for each of the 6 components. If the therapist rates the client as a 0, that means they are independent in the task, but if they rate them a 3, they are not capable. The maximum score one can receive is 18. Biases to keep in mind when administering this assessment is that the client may not be interested in cooking. People from different cultures also cook differently, and some may not cook pudding from a box, or cook pudding at all. Also, gender roles or differences may be considered. Perhaps only the male cooks in the house, so cooking could be foreign to the female, or vice versa. So that's all for the kitchen task assessment, but I also thought it was important to note that there's also a children's kitchen task assessment. This is for children ages 8 to 12 years old, and it only takes about 20 minutes to administer, and it assesses executive functioning. The areas of executive function include initiation, sequencing, safety, organization, judgment, and working memory, similar to the KTA. Also similarly to the KTA, it is performance-based, but instead of making food, Play-Doh is made by the child.